All right, I got your number. Good afternoon. It is time to get started. We're running a little bit behind. We want to give Mr. McBride as much time as we can. The name of his presentation is Healthy Brain Aging, Reducing Dementia Risk. And there's a lot of work being done right now, particularly with African Americans around dementia. And so the farmer, dementia, I mean, we're all not getting any younger. So we need to know how to make sure we age with grace. And so let's give it up for Miss Dr. McBride from the University of Kentucky.
Thank you. Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. Testing. Okay. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Will McBride. I am a neuropsychologist with the University of Kentucky in the Department of Neurology and Sanders Brown Center on Aging. Dr. Fred Schmitt, who is a colleague of mine who is at the Sanders Brown Center of Aging, he couldn't make it today, so I'll be holding down the fort. Thank you all for having me to be here. This is my first time at this conference, and so I'm very excited to be doing work with Kentucky State University. And so my talk is going to be about healthy brain aging and reducing dementia risk. And so what does that have to do with farming? I will try to stretch it and make it work in terms of what are the things that come to mind when we think about farming and think about healthy eating, growing your own food, raising your own livestock, those types of things. So before we get started, so I work in Lexington, Louisville native, but work in Lexington, and Sanders Brown, if you're not familiar with it, their Center on Aging has been around for, just celebrated their 40th year anniversary. They are what we call an Alzheimer's disease research center. So their entire framework is focused on aging and how do we combat dementia and those types of things. So there's two locations. So there's the Turfland location where they do clinical trials and things like that, and then the newly renovated space on the right is where I hang out, and a lot of the research and stuff that goes on dementia takes place. So what I'm going to be talking about today, a couple of my topics, mental health versus brain health. So like, what's the difference? So by training, I am a psychologist. So I'm trained to do therapy. I'm trained to do evaluations. People come see me. People don't want to come see me. Usually when they have conversations with me and I tell them that what I do, they say, oh, you're going to try to shrink me, or you're the shrink. I don't want to talk to you. So I'm actually nice. I'm actually good. Once you get to know me, I promise I won't put you in a straitjacket or anything. So what is mental health versus brain health? Because I think there's a lot of times where we get into this confusion about what is it that we're actually talking about. Physical and brain health and aging. So just like as we get older, our body changes, our muscles change, so does our brain. Brain health and dementia, okay? How does the health of my brain protect or put me at risk for developing dementia? Brain health, diet, and dementia, okay? So thinking about how does that tie into the conference that we're here today for that diet component, and then what do you need to think about in order to promote your brain health? So, mental health. I usually ask this question, and try to get some perspective from the audience, but for the sake of time, there's a whole definition out there of what mental health is. The World Health Organization detailed what mental health is. Oops. And what they basically said is that mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn and work well, and contribute to their community, okay? They go on to say that mental health is a basic human right, so we are all entitled to take care of our mental health. It's more than just I don't have depression, or it's more than I just don't have anxiety. It's how we handle the stressors of our day-to-day lives, right? So it's cold, or I'm stressed out. How do I handle it, but I still gotta do and take care of the responsibilities that I have, okay? Mental health can include mental disorders. So sometimes people come see me for depression or anxiety or other stuff, right? But it's not just that, okay? It's how we just navigate life. Sometimes if I'm upset or if I'm stressed out, I might not be the happiest camper when I go into work, right? That's a part of my mental health. I'm still showing up, I'm still doing what I gotta do, but my mental health has maybe taken a hit, okay? So, well, what's brain health? Well, there's a whole definition of that too. Brain health is the state of the brain functioning across a bunch of different domains that when people come to see me, I'm trying to evaluate. So it's their cognitive, your thinking, your memory, your ability to focus, the sensory, my sense of pain, touch, smell, your social, emotional, right? Your behavioral and your motor abilities. So it's really, our brain health is, we talk about the machinery, right? It's the machinery of the brain, okay? When you're talking about brain health. I like to use the example of, do you have a standard, V6 engine, or you're working with a V8, right? They're both engines. They'll get you to your destination. One might get you there a little quicker than the other, right? So the brain health is focused on the machinery, okay? What kind of machinery are you working with, and how does it work, okay? I also think about it with a car example, like, when you have an electrical issue. That's the worst thing to have with a car, right? Because that means you don't know where the problem is, potentially. That's the machinery, right? So the machinery is focused on the car, the vehicle. Your mental health is the driver. Are you an aggressive driver? Are you patient? Are you prone to getting speeding tickets, right? How do you handle the machinery, okay? Do you have a lead foot? So keep those in mind as some of the things we talk about, your mental health and your brain health. So the difference is just kind of however you want to focus on it. When people come to talk to me, or when I go out into the community, a lot of people don't like to talk about the mental health term because there's still a stigma around that. I try to say brain health, right? Because that we can all kind of get around. There's something up here. There's an organ, there's something up here, right? If I say somebody has hypertension or things like that, you think about your heart, right? Or if I say diabetes, we think about kidneys, things like that, right? Well, with brain health, let's think about it from that standpoint. And so it's focused on if you take care of one, you could potentially take care of the other one, okay? And at the end of the day, they're all taking up the same space, okay? If you're focused on your mental health, you're focusing on your brain health, okay? Regardless of the perspective you use, if you take care of one, you can take care of the other one, okay? If you go to a therapist and you talk about whatever's got you stressed out, you're gonna be taking care of your brain health. If you get good sleep and you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, you're gonna take care of your mental health as well, okay? So these are the kind of talks that I love to have, is when you're whichever way you're focused on it, you're gonna make both better. So I spend a lot of time working with older adults, talking about aging, okay? And what does that look like, okay? So please disregard my Morgan Freeman picture, but I use him as an example because he's ageless, he's timeless in a way, because he's always kind of looked the same, even when he was in his 40s or 50s or things like that. But I like to put a little humor in here. But the point of it is that we are becoming an older society, and people are living longer, okay? Life expectancy is increasing. In the world, not just in the United States, okay? 1 in 11 people were over the age of 65 in 2019, okay? By 2050, 1 in 6. So a sixth of the world will be over the age of 65. The proportion, so the amount of time that we spend past 65 is growing. So long time ago, getting to 65, you might have maybe 5 or 10 more years, right? That's changing. People are living longer and longer after the age of 65. So we're spending more and more time there, okay? And as countries begin to develop, people are living longer across the world, okay? So African Americans, different races. So in the United States, the percentage of people who are hitting 65 is becoming more diverse. Okay? So minority aged older adults are gonna make almost 42% of our people 65 plus by 2050. Nearly half of our older adults are gonna be multicultural, multiracial. A third of 85 plus year olds are gonna be of different backgrounds by 2050. So not only are we living longer, but we're becoming a more racially diverse older adult community. Kentucky, 2019 census, about 17% of Kentuckians were 65 plus. That's gonna increase to a fourth almost by 2030. We're almost 4 years away from that, right? So everywhere, older adults are living longer. And I would even add to that, older adults are living independently longer as they age as well. If you think about if you all have any family members or even yourself, living by themselves or living independently longer in life is something that's happening, okay? So we previously used to think that it's all downhill from here, right? When it comes to the brain, that, hey, what you got is what you got. It's once you come out of the womb, the brain goes down, or it grows. You get improvements, but then eventually there's nothing else that you can do. It's different from your skin, right? Our skin regrows, right? When we take a shower and you see dirt come off, those are skin cells. It regrows. You get new skin cells. We used to think that wasn't the case for the brain, that you can't regrow things. We know that there's parts of the brain that regenerate and that grow new cells now, okay? And we call that neuroplasticity, okay? And it's the idea that we can continue to learn and grow and adapt and react to situations in our environment, even in our older age. And that's important because we used to think, well, what's the point of helping people live longer if their brains aren't capable of growing? It's kind of like that analogy, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's not true, okay? May take longer, but we can teach that dog new tricks. And we can teach each other new tricks or new things. So we know that parts of the brain regenerate cells, grow new cells, and that we can continue to do that later in life. So don't ever let anyone tell you that now, that, oh, the brain is what you got is what you got. We know not all parts of the brain, but there are specific parts that we know regenerate and grow new cells. Okay? So, well, why is that important? So it's all tying in together. So one of my big things that I talk about is that in aging, because we're living longer, we're seeing more and more chronic illnesses and chronic medical conditions that people are living with. So before, if, let's say, for instance, at a point in time, life expectancy was that you're gonna make it to 70, and you got plus or minus a couple years. Well, if I'm only making to 70 and I don't get to the 80s and 90s, I might not see a bunch of health issues pop up, right? But now that we're living longer, now we're seeing more of these health issues, and it's because, hey, I've got more time to hurt my hip or, have things that happen to me. And so in older adults, the 10 most common chronic medical conditions, I'm sure many of you all have seen these or heard about these or know people that are struggling with these, but high blood pressure being number one, high cholesterol, obesity, arthritis, heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, heart failure, depression, and Alzheimer's disease, which is the one that I work with a lot, okay? So as we live longer, we're gonna see more and more stuff come up that you gotta take care of, okay? So where does this all tie in? So we know that chronic health conditions contribute to poor brain health and worse brain health, okay? And two that I want to kind of bring up predominantly is obesity and diabetes, okay? So some 2022 statistics, 1 in 5 children met criteria for being obese, 1 in 3 adults struggle with obesity. There's a pretty big cost associated with obesity, 147 billion. They've been talking about this in the news or with the military. 2 in 5 adults are weight eligible and physically prepared for basic training. 2 in 5, so that's what, 40%? And so there are a lot of issues with obesity, with diabetes, okay? So diabetes is an impairment in the body's ability to convert glucose to energy, resulting in excessive glucose in the blood, okay? For glucose to be transferred from blood to cells, we need insulin, okay? Diabetes comes up and begins as an insulin resistance, okay? So the cells don't synthesize or utilize insulin, okay? And so type 2 diabetes is the diabetes that most people are familiar with. It's adult onset diabetes, right? Just for reference, type 1 is something that you see in juveniles or children or adolescents, and it's more of an autoimmune issue, right? But the diabetes that we hear about a lot in the news or just is an epidemic is adult onset, and it's a lot of times due to nutrition, lifestyle, those types of things. Okay? So let me skip over some of this. So obesity and diabetes often go hand in hand, okay? Risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, all of those things increase with excessive weight or with obesity and aging process. So as we get older, we're more prone to having a lot of these things, those chronic medical conditions I brought up, okay? We know that diabetes can lead to hardening of the arteries, atherosclerosis, changes in our blood vessels. It can lead to stroke, neuropathy, pain, right? Nerve pain, stroke, cognitive decline. I want to talk about that one. Cognitive decline is also a factor that's impacted by diabetes. Ethnic racial minorities tend to be impacted by diabetes at higher levels than other groups. And then diabetes reduces our life expectancy. So for men, typically 7.3 years off of our typical life expectancy. For women, 9.5. So So why does all that matter? People people come into my office because a chronic health condition may be contributing to them having cognitive issues. And one of the big ones being dementia, okay? And so dementia is a term that I'm sure we've heard or you've heard often in the news. It's an umbrella term, okay? And what I mean by that is that you maybe heard, oh, somebody said they have Alzheimer's disease. Well, that's not dementia. Actually, it is. Dementia is a catch-all. It's a umbrella term that there are different types of dementias out there. Alzheimer's disease is one of those types of dementias, okay? So if somebody says, it says, oh, my family member or so-and-so has dementia, you say, well, what kind? Because there's different kinds. We have Alzheimer's disease, you have vascular dementia due to stroke, right? Parkinson's disease, Michael J. Fox, person famous for Parkinson's disease. That can lead to a dementia, okay? Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's disease, right? Interestingly, Bruce Willis has a dementia. Not Alzheimer's disease, but he has a type of dementia, okay? Somebody else, pretty famous politically, they just announced has a type of dementia. Does anybody know who I'm talking about? Say it louder. Not Joe Biden. Potentially, we don't know yet. It hasn't come out or anything yet. I think they said he had cancer right now or has been struggling, but Rainbow Coalition. Jesse Jackson. He's got PSP, progressive, but it's a type of dementia. So there are a lot of people out there that have dementias that we just might not even know about it. Rosa Parks also had a dementia. Yes. So dementia is the umbrella term, okay? So there's different types of dementias. Alzheimer's disease is just one type. So somebody can have dementia, but it not be Alzheimer's disease. Not everybody is going to get Alzheimer's disease, okay? Another one, Robin Williams. He had what's called Lewy body dementia. So his dementia was different from Alzheimer's disease, okay? And so they have these distinct categories of what's causing the issues, okay? Great question, though. And if there are any other questions and things like that, please feel free to jump in. Go ahead, sir. Oh, you sure? So that's a great, so Muhammad Ali. And somebody up here said he had Parkinson's. Well, it looked like Parkinson's. He had Parkinson's-like symptoms because of potentially the repeated head injuries he got. But he did not have Parkinson's disease like Michael J. Fox, where Michael J. Fox's Parkinson's disease was just, it came out of nowhere. Meaning that we don't know what caused Michael J. Fox's. We know what caused potentially Muhammad Ali's was that the repeated head injuries, he got brain bleeds, which can lead to some of the symptoms that he was having. Okay, that's a great question. So it looks like he had dementia, but it's not due to, so when we talk about a dementia, it's going to get worse. It's going to progressively go down, okay? So with Alzheimer's disease, typically that person may say, hey, I forgot to pay a bill on time. Oh, I'll pay it next time, or I paid it, I'm forgetting to pay a couple bills. Then it may lead to, I'm getting lost going to the bank, right? Until it gets worse and worse until now I'm having trouble remembering the names of the people at my church, now it's getting to the point that I don't recognize family members, right? So it starts out kind of mild, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. That's what a dementia is, okay? And so we don't have any cures for any of these dementias, but it's basically the brain is getting weaker and weaker, and you're now having these issues, okay? So we can see changes on imaging with different types of dementias. So this is an image of a couple of slides of brains, okay? And what you need to know, I wish I had a little laser pointer, but these parts of the brain right here, they look like little cauliflowers, or maybe little broccolis. Y'all are the farmers. Y'all probably have a better idea than I do, but they look like little cauliflowers. And those are the temporal lobes of the brain. Those are important for memory and learning. So if I ask you to learn 5 words, these parts of the brain are going to be activated when you learn new information. What do y'all notice about those 2 areas as we get in these pictures down here? They get smaller. So this is kind of the mid-ground. We call it mild cognitive impairment, where you're kind of in between normal and not, and you can see there's some little bit of shrinkage. Here, it's almost shriveled up. That's what's happening when we have Alzheimer's disease in the brain. Okay? So you remember I said earlier about how, maybe, hopefully I had a 6-pack when I was a little bit younger, and as I get older, that goes away. My muscles get weaker. I don't get that same definition. Our brain, like our muscles, it shrivels, it gets weaker, right? So even I'm 36 years old, I have some shrinkage in my brain. Just because that's life, right? My posture isn't as good as it was 10, 15 years ago, right? I used to be maybe 6'2". When I go to the doctor and they measure me and I'm 6'1.5", I'm like, what's happened? We shrink, right? Our spine shrinks. You go meet your favorite basketball player, he don't look 6'5" anymore, And so the same thing happens internally and in our brains. So it's not to scare anybody, but it's just, this is what's happening. We also know that what I want you to take away from here is that our brain is changing before we ever notice that our family member is struggling with remembering to pay their bills. So the process oftentimes happens silently to where it might be years before we start seeing those changes, which again goes back to all the buildup of those chronic medical conditions. When we don't take care of them, they start working against us. And then we get to the point where we start seeing that person forget to do their taxes 2 years in a row, even though they haven't changed their taxes. They ain't got no new properties or nothing, but they forgot to do it 2 years in a row, which are conversations I have with family members a lot when they come in and are concerned about someone who's having cognitive changes. Yes? You're getting ahead of me. I'm glad. So our gentleman up here asked, are there any interventions or things that we can do to, I'm assuming, to stave off getting to this point? And I'll talk about that. Yeah, how much time? Let me see. Let me make sure I'm getting ahead. So one other thing I want to point out is that African Americans and Hispanic individuals have 2 to 3 times more are more susceptible to Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so specifically for African Americans, we have higher rates of stroke, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, along with those Alzheimer's disease things. Interestingly, for men, black men, it's not one of our like leading causes of death, but part of it is we don't make it to that age to where we can start to see the Alzheimer's disease. So black men don't even make it that far to even have Alzheimer's disease pop up. Yes, 2 times more likely than white individuals. White people in general. The rates, when you start to kind of break it down, men versus women, I can't remember the exact rates, but just generally speaking, black communities are generally 2 to 3 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than white individuals. Yes. So it goes back to what I was kind of bringing up about, so let's go back to diabetes, for instance. Diabetes, what is one of the common things that happens to someone who doesn't take care of their diabetes? Amputations, blindness, amputations, stroke, right? I want to focus on amputations for a second. Why do they have amputations? Poor circulation, right? So if it's happening down at the feet, those aren't separate systems. It's all the same system. So if I'm getting poor vasculature to my feet, what do you think it's happening up here? Right. It's just we get more energy up here, so that's not going to get amputated, right? But the strokes happen, okay? So when you think about those things, like, oh, wow, I didn't think about that, right? So when you think about it, it's all of these systems, heart disease, stroke, obesity, all of that impacts the brain. I use the example, I'm gonna come to you just a second. I use the analogy, and please give me credit where you heard it first. If you're fortunate enough, you can get a heart transplant, right? Like we have the technology to do heart transplants. If you get on the list and you're a candidate and you luck up, they did the first hand transplant almost 30 years ago in Louisville, right? We can transplant a lot of things. We can't transplant the brain. And, you know, Elon Musk has not figured out how to transfer consciousness into a robot or an android yet. So we're stuck with the brain that we got. So I bring these things up as a sobering kind of thing of like, hey, I have to do a better job of taking care of my body because I want my brain to be intact as long as I can to where I can be as independent as long as I can. Because as a society, we are living longer. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to ask if, with all these considerations, with the likeliness for African Americans to experience these health factors, is environmental factors also factored into those numbers?
Yes. So, and let me be very clear. You know, as a scientist, correlation, not causation. So it's not to say that those things cause necessarily as they are the cause of Alzheimer's disease. We don't know what the cause is. We just see that they kind of hang out together and they all play a role. And so environmental factors also play a role. There's a number of studies on social determinants of health that look at, hey, access to food deserts, processed foods. We know processed foods, increase the sedentary lifestyle, all of those kinds of things. So if you're in an environment where you have less access to fresh foods, that absolutely is going to play a role in your ability to be healthier and things like that.
About manufacturing too, the actual air quality, stuff like that too. The propensity for African Americans to be closer to, those kind of harmful toxins.
So I grew up in the West End in Louisville, so on Algonquin Parkway, where there used to be all of those factories and stuff, they've done studies to look at like rates of cancer were higher, rates of asthma in my neighborhood, respiratory diseases, respiratory disorders, and a lot of that was due to manufacturing and to pollution and air pollution. And so those all have not only just, the quality of your life and the quality of, just exercise. Like if I have asthma, I don't want to go outside. You know, if I have breathing issues, I don't want to go running around playing. So it's all, you know, interwoven into that, into those things. They've yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, you know, all of these factors play a role, and ultimately for me, I nerd out on these things so much so that I wanted to become a doctor of it. So nobody has to convince me how important the brain is, right? For me at least. I just know that all of these things lead up to this thing up here that we use on a day-to-day basis. And I do evaluations with patients where I have to have conversations, hard conversations about, hey, this family member can't live alone anymore. This family member had 2-month-old milk in the refrigerator and is not checking expiration dates. That's a cognitive issue. That's something wrong with their brain, right? And oftentimes it could be because of some of these other factors that, hey, if we take care of these things, we might stave that off longer so that people don't have to deal with those things. Yes, sir. Yes, it's a different type of Alzheimer's. So the question was, does Alzheimer's, can a young person get Alzheimer's? And the short answer is yes. It's a different type though, right? So we have testing, we have knowledge to where we can test for genes that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. There's a gene that you could get tested for that tells you your risk. Either you could have a protective gene part, or you could have the gene that actually makes you at greater risk, okay? And oftentimes people who come in with a family history of Alzheimer's disease, they may wanna get tested and say, hey, I wanna see what my risk is. You can see that, right? It just denotes risk. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily gonna get it. We don't have a time machine to tell when that's gonna happen, but you can learn about those things. I want to just touch on, these are risk factors that increase your risk for dementia. And a lot of these are modifiable. So when I learned about, hey, you know, a mind is a terrible thing to waste, get your education. Less education is associated with increased risk for dementia, about 5%. Hearing loss. Yeah, I would not believe how many times I have to have conversations about, are you wearing your hearing aids? And they don't want to. It's not just because, it's not that I want you to look silly and, you know, have these things sticking out of your ears. It's actually helpful for your brain. If you're not hearing things appropriately, it's not encoding in your brain appropriately, and it's gonna make it harder for your brain to work. Okay? So there are so many different risk factors that if we take care of some of these things, we could cut our risk. And air pollution. And social isolation. Being social is important for our brain to stay healthy. So, going back to there are some that think diabetes is, dementia or Alzheimer's disease is a type 3 diabetes. That's been a term that's been thrown out because there's such a relationship between people who have specifically like uncontrolled diabetes, their risk for developing Alzheimer's disease and things like that is higher, okay? So take care of your diabetes. You may stave off future cognitive decline, okay? So what protects my brain, okay? So there's a lot of things that are going to help protect your brain. Educational attainment. So how I said that parts of the brain continue to grow and we continue to regenerate those cells. Stay educated, right? I know older adults who come in for evaluation and say, oh yeah, I'm taking a class learning this, or I'm learning this. Stay active cognitively, okay? How many people in here play Candy Crush or Bejeweled or any of those phone games or apps and things? I see a couple hands and stuff like that, okay? So, yeah, okay. Those games are not the same as a Sudoku or anything where you're having to rely on different brain abilities to solve the problem, right? And so like crossword puzzles where it's like, oh, I got chess, right? Chess is a great example. I have to think of I have to think 2-3 moves in ahead. If I go this way, they're gonna go that way. What are the I'm having to process information, analyze that information. With the apps or with those games, you become good at figuring out which colors go in the right direction, right? It doesn't take a lot of brain output or machinery, going to get those things. So staying engaged. I want to just touch on a couple of things of what's going to help protect our brain. So there have been different countries, and even in the US, that they have looked at what works and what protects people's brain. A study in Finland, they took about 1,200 older adults, 60 to 77, and they looked at all of these variables, all right? They looked at their heart health, their blood pressure, their BMI, their physical activity, and they did two things. They had a control group and a group where they actually did stuff with them, okay? The control group, they just literally called them in or checked in on them and said, hey, here's some health advice. This is what you should do, right? They just gave them some advice. And then the intervention, they actually did activities and interventions where they learned about nutrition, physical health, cognitive training, and they managed their health issues. The intervention group showed improvement in cognitive abilities. Okay, so they followed them over 2 years, and they showed that when you do interventions on all of these things, you can see improvements and less decline as people get older. Right? So that's valuable. That's valuable information. Showing that, hey, if we do these things, and these aren't medications. This isn't medication. This is nutritional activities, physical exercise. Older adults that did not receive the 4 interventions were at greater risk for cognitive decline. Meaning that as they got older, they potentially got worse more or quicker than the people that got the intervention, okay? Older adults that received the 4 interventions had lower BMI, increased their exercise, and eating of fish and vegetables. So they had physical exercises about once to twice a week with muscle and strength training, aerobic exercises. The foods that they had was more dietary fiber, okay? Less meat, less alcohol, less salt, higher consumption of fruits and vegetables, whole grains in their cereal products, and let's see what else. And then here was their exercises. So they were showing that if we do these kind of basic, simple things, we can see better brain protection. Here is another study I want to get to where they focused on something called the MIND diet. This was a US-based study. So the MIND diet is a diet that is touted as, hey, being protective against cognitive decline, okay? So if you follow this MIND diet, these are things that will help protect your brain. Hence why we're here talking about these things, because a lot of it involves vegetables, green leafy vegetables, dark green leafy vegetables. So our kale, our spinach, dark berries and fruits, right, with antioxidants. We know those things to be protective factors against cognitive decline. Getting good sleep, okay? And so the studies that we have that are out there show that if people engage in some of these things, they're more likely to have better overall cognitive abilities and stay cognitively intact longer in their ages. One of the big ones for me is sleep. I try to get my 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. How many people in here get 7 to 8 hours of sleep? Okay, good. I might have to have a talk with the other people in here. But our brain needs that time to recharge. Anyone in here have sleep apnea? Okay, sleep apnea. I could go on and on about the sleep apnea. And if you do have it and you don't use your CPAP, I'm really gonna have a conversation with you because it's so important, especially when it comes to our sleep. I wanna be mindful of our time, but a lot of the work that I do in the community, Louisville, along this corridor, is going to having talks with people about brain health and things like that. Sanders Brown has a long history of doing works like that, especially talking about brain health, because we know that it's very important and very reliable. And so I want to be mindful of our time. Sanders Brown Center on Aging website has a ton of resources on how to get into studies, also learn about brain health activities and things, or even having a speaker come to an event for you. So I want to thank you all for your time, and happy to take any questions if we have time.
All right, are there any questions? Yes, ma'am. Fasting.
I'd have to go and look up the literature. I don't have one necessarily. I don't know of anything out there to say that it is bad. In terms of, I guess it depends on the type of fasting that you're doing, right? I'd have to go, I don't know the literature on that. Like, I would have to go look at the literature. I mean, I might even do that in like the 5 minutes after I'm done here, just to see if there's anything out there. But that's a really great question.
Illnesses are from a buildup of plaque in the brain. And when you fast, it lets it all come down. So I don't know how true that is, but I've read it several times, and I just wanted to know what your opinion of that was.
I'd have to go and look at those studies that look at so what this nice lady brought up was the buildup of plaque in the brain associated with Alzheimer's or dementia. That is absolutely 100% the case, that when you have dementia and these things, we can see the plaques built up in the brain, similar to plaques that are in a heart or in your arteries. We can see those, okay? And part of Alzheimer's disease is a plaque buildup. There's different types of plaques. Whether fasting removes those plaques more, I don't know. And I would have to go and look up the literature on that.
Is there always a decline with Alzheimer's, or is it possible to have it a touch for a long time?
I like the analogy of, I've lost a step or two. We all are going to lose a step or two. Some people more than others, right? So we know that as we get older, it takes us longer to process information, right? It takes us longer, even just moving, right? Well, let's say you were a dancer. You might not be able to go as long. That's a cognitive ability, right? Like, it's a physical one, but it's also a cognitive one. I got to remember the steps. Our brains are going to slow down. Alzheimer's disease is the bad slowing down, right? It's gone to the point where you keep slowing down instead of, I've gotten to a point where I'm still good. I can still do and manage my day-to-day lives. We want people to stay in that range and not go to the range where I can't live on my own or do those things. Okay.
All right, those are all great questions. You can also pull Dr.
Yes.
aside from Algonquin, west side of Louisville, pull him over on the outskirts and ask personal questions. We'd like to get a card from you if you have one.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd like to start some activities for seniors, you know, to keep our brains, you know, lubricated. Give it up for Dr. McBride. There is we're going to ask you to make sure that you do the survey. They keep reiterating in my ear, tell them to do the survey. So do the survey. It determines what happens in the following year. So anything you can do to support that or encourage that.
So, Cecil and Garland. So I'm right off about Three Brothers, right on Broadway. So, so UK doesn't have office, but there are other. Yeah, it ain't that many.
You're not in an office.
I'm not in Louisville in the office.
Okay.
But it ain't too many of me running around. Yeah. Yeah.
What can you tell me?
The survey that we're referring to is in the back of the book, in the back of your program.
Okay.
It's
Let me answer some more questions.
Okay.
I'll definitely chat with you.
session
I can't find the
survey
mouse.
Scantron.
The thing.
Oh,
Thank you.
there you go.
Thank you, ma'am. Brian, make sure I get your card, please, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Thank you. Did you get your flash drive? No, not yet.